Welcome again to another edition of My Awesome Empire. This week, we visit the Gardner W. Spring Auditorium in Ontario. It's one of the largest performance theaters in this part of Southern California, and many locals think it's our grandest theater. The major stars who've performed on its stage date back to the 40s and number into the hundreds. But none shine quite as bright as the director of that theater, who makes sure that the show always goes on. We meet Dave Masterson later in our show. One of the IE's greatest kids joins us as well. But first, we travel to Colton. That city has been the home to greats such as songwriter Jimmy Webb, Detroit Lions football player Dennis Crane, Olympic silver medalist Susan Woodstrup, musician Jim Messina, television tattoo artist Kat Von D, and Luis Gonzalez, known lovingly as Dr. G. He's the city's historian, ambassador, and keeper of the great stories of that city. Cal State San Bernardino communications student Desi Lopez visited with Dr. G at the City Museum this week and asked how the city of Colton first began.
In 1887, it was established as a city. Backing up before that, in 1875, it was considered a township. We can go back even further to the 1700s when we had the Native Indians that were living here. I believe those tribes were called the Serrano Indian tribe and then Gabriel Lindo Indian tribes. And they were here around the 1700s. Right around 1771, the Spanish explorers came to explore California, and it was during that time that the Spanish missions were eventually established in this area. Colton did not have a Spanish mission at the time, but the people came through here establishing those places. Right around 1821 was the Mexican period where the area was controlled by the Mexican government. And that's significant because that spans from 1821 to about 1845. They were here. They set up big plantations or ranchos, as they called them at the time. And one of the biggest contributions they made at that time was planting a whole bunch of citrus trees. And that was very important to the beginning of industrialization here in Colton. So that being said, moving on to 1848, that was the beginning of California's statehood. And it was at that time we had our first immigrants to establish a community here in the Colton area. The people actually came from New Mexico. They traveled over the Santa Fe Trail into this area near the Santa Ana River. And they established a little community called Awamanza. People that have been around for a long time know that word. And that's where the first people settled in this area way back then. And that was in, 1848. And then about 4 years after that, there was a big flood which destroyed that city. And then a couple years after that, in 1864, there was another community that was established in the south part of Colton, and they called it San Salvador. And it was at that point more people started to come in and get established. Now, moving into about 10 years later to 1875, the railroad companies came through town, coming from, I believe it was Arizona, and they wanted to do a connector line all the way to Los Angeles, and they created a depot here in Colton. And when that was established, they called it a township. And then after that grew a little bit, then in 1887, after more development and after more growth of people, then the city of Colton established itself as an incorporated city in 1887.
How did you become known as a historian and ambassador to Colton?
About 2 years ago, I walked into the museum. After looking at the displays that deal with the police department and the fire department, and of course the wonderful stories about the Wyatt Earp family, I came across this bookshelf cabinet that's full of a bunch of books. And so I asked the president, Mr. Mike Murphy, what's the significance of all these books? He goes, well, there's several historical books, and there's some yearbooks from Colton High School. Well, that piqued my curiosity. I said, well, can I look at them? He goes, well, they're not all there. And I said, well, maybe the ones that I might be in there because I've been at Colton High School for, at that time, 16 years, and I thought maybe I could look through some of the ones that I've been a part of. And that did it. That was my end to the museum and getting involved as far as a historian here in Colton. I went on a journey, if you will, a mission, if you will, I called it, to get all the yearbooks, and off I went hitting the streets. I went to Colton High School. I talked to the librarian, I talked to the yearbook advisor, the principal, and I went to the school district office. And little by little, one at a time, I was replacing the books. 2004 was my last piece, and we made a big celebration, put in the paper, had refreshments and a band and everything like that, had a big celebration. But this is the one and only existing yearbook collection. That started my historical trek into Colton.
If you just joined us, you're listening to My Awesome Empire. I'm Desi Lopez, and we're speaking with Luis Gonzalez, also known as Dr. G. Locals in the city of Colton know him as the resident ambassador and historian of this unique little city. Dr. G, some rather famous bad guys lived here long ago. Can you tell us more about that?
What a great question. I think at the top of the list is probably the brothers and sons of the Earp family. To tell you the truth, Virgil Earp was one of the brothers, and he was actually the first sheriff or marshal of the city of Colton when it was first established. And so he's one of the famous ones. Now, he wasn't really too bad. It was actually his brother Wyatt Earp, which is probably a little bit better well known. But Wyatt Earp was actually running a little bit because he had a little problem in Arizona when he was working in Tombstone, Arizona, known as the famous gunfight at OK Corral. A lot of shooting going on. And after that was done, one of the brothers named Morgan was assassinated by a band of criminals. So Wyatt Earp wanted revenge on this, and so he murdered one of the criminals, and then he had to flee because he was a fugitive, and he was actually the first bad guy that came around. Wyatt Earp never really lived in Colton. Virgil was the one that took residence, as well as his father. His father's name was Nicholas Porter Earp, I believe is his full name. And when the city of Colton started, Wyatt Earp, because of experience in gunfighting and law enforcement, he was elected as the first city marshal. And that's convenient because the father was the city's first city recorder and town judge. So they had like a little going in. So I think he would be at the top of the list as far as bad guys are concerned.
Who would you say was the greatest person to come from Colton?
Well, that's also a very good question. I think at the top of the list and very well known is a young man named Ken Hubbs. He's well known in Colton. He went to Colton High School and lettered in sports. I believe he played football, basketball, baseball. He was in the high school years at Colton for 3 years, making All-League, All-CIF, and All-American, I believe. And he took his teams to the championship, definitely his junior year and his senior year. He could have went off to college, any college of his choice, with a scholarship, but he chose to join the professional ranks of Major League Baseball. He was hired by the Chicago Cubs and won Rookie of the Year, got a high batting average. He won a Golden Glove Award. And unfortunately, after 2 years in the majors, he was killed in a plane accident in Utah. And I believe he graduated in 1959, and he died roughly around 62 or 64, right in there.
Dr. G, what has been the single most difficult moment in the history of the city?
Single most difficult moment. Okay, there probably can be several of those. I'm thinking in 1938, there was a flood that covered Colton that caused a lot of hardships for us. I'm not sure of the single most one. That was a big one because people obviously had to adjust. Another difficult factor was in 1960s when the city was going through redevelopment and building and annexing new areas. They unfortunately decided to tear down some of the old, wonderful, original, historical buildings that were here in the downtown area. We lost a hotel, we lost an arcade, we lost movie theaters, all with historical buildings, and we lost all that. And I think we kind of lost our character at that time. That was a hard time. There's a couple of other issues that came up in 2003. I believe the member of the city government was caught in some kind of corruption scandal of some sort. So that was kind of a hard time for us as well. And then the only other one that I can think of is in 2011, the city was about $5 million in the hole. We had a shortfall due to lack of transparency and mismanagement of financial budgets. So all those are problems and dark times for our city.
Okay, having said that, on the other hand, what are the grandest moments in the history of the city?
Well, I could probably think of three of them. Probably the biggest one, obviously, is the incorporation of the city in 1887. That meant the future. That meant development. That meant opportunity, business. So that was a grand scale kind of a positive effect of Colton. Another one is in right around 1960s, we annexed the whole Cooley Ranch area just across the freeway. And that added a lot of acreage, added a lot of business, a lot of economy. That was a grand time in our city. Finally, just last weekend, we opened up our brand new, shiny, sparkly senior center right downtown, providing quality housing for our senior citizens 55 and above. I'm over 55, so now I qualify. And it's just gorgeous. It's about one block up from the museum. It has 121 units available, and it just sparkles. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful addition to our community.
What is it about Colton that people here love so much?
To me, it's got to be, number one, has got to be the people. People know people. People know of people. And in many cases, people are related to other people. We're one big family, and I think number one for me, that's what they love. It's somebody you can count on. For example, spending time in South Colton, a lot of these families been in the same home 40, 50, 60 years. There's one gentleman on L Street that was born in the same house, and this gentleman is 93 years, and I met him about a month ago. And that's not unusual for South Colton, but it's the people. Secondly, the thing that the people love is the history, the rich history. We go back. We started right when the state started, and we just have stories after stories available. I think those are the two main ones.
You're listening to My Awesome Empire. Up next, it's known by many as the Inland Empire's grandest theater, and it sits right in the middle of a high school. That story coming up. Stay with us.
Would you like to open up your home and share the American culture with an international student? The College of Extended Learning at Cal State San Bernardino is seeking local Inland Empire families to host students for programs ranging from 1 week to 5 months. Welcoming an international visitor into your home is an exciting and rewarding experience. By hosting an international student, you allow them to learn about our country, not only in the classroom, but also through the everyday American traditions at your home. This opportunity provides invaluable education to both host families and students, while creating memories and friendships that will last a lifetime. Homestay families are asked to include students into their normal family activities. If this sounds like something you may be interested in, please apply online at cel.csusb.edu/IEP and click on the Host Families link, or call 909-537-5980. That's 909-537-5980. Help make a difference in an international student's life today.
Welcome back to My Awesome Empire. Most folks in the Inland Empire have never heard of the Gardner W. Spring Auditorium. But those who do call it one of the great gems of the Inland Empire. One of the largest, busiest, and most beautiful performance theaters in Southern California sits right in the middle of Chaffee High School. Sure, the Spring Auditorium hosts the largest onstage student productions around, but great celebrities dating back to the 40s have fought to perform on this incredible stage. Earlier this week, Cal State San Bernardino communications student Annalise Gomez sat down with theater director Dave Masterson and asked when this great old theater first began.
The theater was actually constructed during 37 to 39, and it was dedicated March 17, 1939, with what was referred to as Public Works Administration money. It came about because of the 1933 Long Beach earthquake and the need to replace the 1912 structure that was on this site.
So it has a long history.
It's got a varied history. Can you imagine the number of people
That's
in
incredible.
here over the years?
Mm-hmm. When did your love for theater first begin?
Well, actually, I'm referred to as a preacher's kid, a PK, and my father and my mother had church services that involved a lot of theatrical events, and I think my earliest, fondest memories are from age 2, maybe 3, so 55, 56 years ago.
Dave, what brought you to the Spring Auditorium?
Well, I came to the district in 1984. I had multiple assignments, and there was a long-time theater teacher here. I thought it was forever, 33 years, but now that I'm at 37 years, I guess he wasn't here that long. He was just a spry young kid. But I came here because he had retired, and they wanted someone who had some renovation background, but yet a certificated teacher to mentor and create a theater program.
What kinds of performances did people come here to see in the early days?
Well, from the earliest onset, there was a community concert series that brought in celebrities from L.A. because Euclid Avenue and the 10 freeway was the stopping over point, first from Pomona, that far-out drive from L.A. to Pomona, and then, of course, from here to Palm Springs. And so the celebrities would come out. It was far enough out of town where the reviews and the critics wouldn't review it, but yet close enough that they could come out, stay at the Mayfair over in Pomona, and entertain 2,100 people here in Gardner Spring Auditorium.
How about now?
Now it's primarily a rental facility, but certainly used most directly by the school itself. We're in our 34th production of 18 seasons since 1996, and we're going to go over 225,000 patrons to have seen 34 shows here in this auditorium since I've been here.
Since day one, how many shows do you think have occurred here?
Oh my! From the huge major celebrities to today, there's probably been an average of 5 shows a month for every month. So 60 shows a year, 60 separate productions a year, and we've been since 1939. So, oh my God, it's huge.
It's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to My Awesome Empire. I'm Annalise Gomez, and we're speaking with David Masterson, the director of the Gardner W. Spring Auditorium at Chaffey High School, a centuries-old theater that is believed by many to be the greatest theater in the Inland Empire. Now, what is the hardest part of putting on big-scale shows here?
Well, without a doubt, the hardest part of putting on a production here is the fact that the auditorium is so large. We're bigger than 90% of the Broadway houses in New York City and all of the theaters in the West End of London. So when you've got a 50-foot proscenium, you got to build a lot of scenery and you got to put a lot of people on stage. So the difficulty is how big the house is. And then, of course, because you've got 2,100 people, you got to make sure that people in that very back row can hear, and the sight lines are good for the action that you put on the stage.
And for those who haven't seen it yet, this is really, I'm looking at it now and it's incredible. It's huge. It's really big.
Well, it's, people know in this area that it is the largest performing arts venue in the largest county in the nation, San Bernardino. So this is it. Its sister auditorium, by the way, L.A. County, is Bridges Auditorium, which is very, very similar in size. But we like to say that Gardner Spring is the grand dame and Bridges is the little sister.
Now, Dave, who are some of the stars that have come here?
Well, you from most recently might remember or might have heard that Val Kilmer was here to do his one-man show. But in the past, because of the relationship of the Community Concert Association, which was a group of invested individuals here in our community that brought big names to our area. Now, the biggest area was during the war years when Jack Benny hosted the USO shows here. So during that time period, everybody from Marlene Dietrich, Bob Hope, Frank Sinatra, Joe E. Brown, Tony Bennett, there have been tons of people here. Pablo Casal, Isaac Stern, the great baritone Paul Robeson, the first American appearance of the Von Trapp family singers from the Sound of Music fame, all here in Gardner Spring over the years.
A deep love for theater runs throughout your own family, doesn't it?
Well, we eat, sleep, and drink it. And both my sons were graduates of Chaffey High School, so they've been on this stage. They grew up on this stage. And all the years since I've been here, and they go out and tell GWS story now. My oldest is a principal dancer for Lady Gaga, and my youngest just finished a 2-year term with Jennifer Lopez and now has moved from ABC Families, the Fosters, to South Beach Toe down in Miami Beach. So, yeah, and then, of course, the real queen of Gardner Spring is my wife, Lisa Marie, who is my own personal critic and my main theater reviewer.
That's amazing. What has been the greatest part of running this beautiful and historic theater?
Without question, the most satisfying part of it is to see a young man or a young woman grow by virtue of their involvement in a theater program. So I have countless memories of kids from broken homes who have found themselves and stayed in school, did the right thing, got their degrees, and some of them pretty successful to this day. So without question, my involvement with the students.
What is it that you love so much about theater?
Well, for me, early on I was a performer, but I think what I really enjoy the most is that because I'm a director and I've moved away from performing, I like the fact that when you direct, you get to be all the roles. So, for example, in The Sound of Music, I get to be Captain Von Trapp and, of course, Maria also.
Nothing comes from nothing, nothing ever could. So somewhere in my youth
Or childhood,
I must have done something good.
Stay with us. More of My Awesome Empire in just a moment.
Start college as a student. Start growing as a leader. Start your career as an officer. Start strong. When you register to take Army ROTC course electives, you'll be on the path to leadership. You'll also learn lessons that go beyond the classroom. And as an Army ROTC cadet, you may be eligible for full tuition scholarship and a monthly allowance of up to $500. When you graduate and complete Army ROTC, you will leave ready to lead as an officer in the U.S. Army, Army Reserve, or Army National Guard. To find out more, visit your Army ROTC representative. Contact Army ROTC San Bernardino at 909-537-5533 or visit armyrotc.csusb.edu for more information. There's Strong, and then there's Army Strong, paid for by the United States Army.
As we close our program today, we remind you to write and let us know about the great people and businesses that you love in the Inland Empire. We'll have that address in just a bit. But first, we introduce you to San Bernardino fourth grader Alyssa Gonzalez from the SKIP Poetry and Prose Writing Program with a poem she wrote about her grandmother.
My grandma is the best, the sight of her dark brown eyes, sparkling on a warm, sunny summer day, like twinkling stars on a clear black sky. The smell of her sweet perfume, leaving tracks as she walks, like blooming roses on a spring morning. The feel of her gentle touch from her hands, supporting me in every way, like soft, silky flowers in a garden. The sound of her caring voice, brightening my long, tired day, like a rainbow after a storm. The taste of her delicious cooking, satisfying my hungry face, like the sweet smell of baking on a rainy day. My grandma is the best.
Thanks for joining us today for another edition of My Awesome Empire. We're looking for great, historic, and innovative businesses to feature on our program. Do you know an amazing business owner? Write to us. My Awesome Empire at csusb.edu. We're back again next week at this time with more innovative and heroic people who are making the Inland Empire a better place to live and to do business. This program is produced by the great students of California State University, San Bernardino. Thanks to student producer co-hosts Desi Lopez and Annalise Gomez. To student engineers Daniel Cruz, Desi Lopez, and Arnold Robles. And to chief production engineer Donaldo Nunez. My Awesome Empire is a production of the Creative Media Services Department of Cal State San Bernardino. Until next time, I'm Lacey Kendall. Have an awesome week.